As an entrepreneur, my general advice is you want to learn from people who are more successful than you. Certainly Elon Musk is more successful than almost all of us, but he did make some recent comments on the United States and on immigration that I have to disagree with, and today I'm going to tell you where I think Elon Musk is wrong. So Elon Musk has been attending some of these political events recently, and he made some comments about saying that the U.S. needs to be more pro-immigration because it's a great place to come and bring your business, bring your ideas, and open yourself up to a lot of opportunities. No doubt he took advantage of that as an immigrant. I think he's wrong, and I'm going to tell you why I believe that is. If it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consulting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors basically do the opposite of what he's saying, which is go where they're treated best, overseas, to other countries, often more emerging countries, asset havens, tax havens, to reduce their taxes, keep more of their money, protect and diversify what they have, and get second citizenship to make sure that they are always in control. Elon Musk, ostensibly a multiple citizen, I think, South Africa, Canada, and now the United States, has some diversification. Perhaps none of those countries are moving light speed into the future, but he is diversified and he has options. Here's why I think that he's wrong when he says the U.S. needs to step up and be more pro-immigration. Now, I'm pro-immigration. I think people, especially with skills, and I think also people with wealth, should have the chance to move somewhere. And so when I see countries, and when I see blocks of countries like the European Union in general that say, we don't want wealth, we don't want golden visas. Wait a second, do you want investment to your country? It's an increasingly competitive world. You should want wealth and you should want talent, okay? And so he thinks the U.S. needs to do a better job because it is still one of the hardest countries in the world to move to. My belief on the United States is it's the best place to live if you want a job. Now, we've had multiple clients over the years who work, like, for example, for Google, make huge salaries. And many of them have ended up leaving the United States and going to work in, let's say, Switzerland, for example. And they find that the huge salaries in Switzerland, from a tax perspective, from a lifestyle perspective, from just all the benefits on a personal view, is better in a place like Switzerland than it was in the United States. They think they're getting more value for their money, they're enjoying their life more. And so even in some cases, being a very high-value employee, there may be better options if you work for, let's say, a multinational company. But when I chose to give up U.S. citizenship, my perspective was I haven't had a job in a long, long time. And I'm someone who's an entrepreneur. And hey, there may be certain benefits of being in the U.S. You can go and be on Joe Rogan's podcast or give a speech at some conference. But like for most people, you can just go back to the United States. You can get a visa. You can go through the visa waiver program. So you can still go. You just can't be there all the time. But I realized I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to rely on that. And by the way, even today, even a job can often be freelance. It can often be, paid. People are working remotely all over the world. So even having a job today, you don't have to live in the United States to do the job. But that was my perspective. If you're going to move to the United States, or if you're already in the United States and you're considering moving, why wouldn't you? It would be, I want to get a job. Because even many Western European countries, you're going to make a lot less due to the higher social taxes, higher income taxes, just higher costs there. You're going to have less in your pocket than you would if you did the same job in the United States, which is why people from places like Canada, the UK, Western Europe sometimes do come to the United States. Despite the fact that they may want to stay in their own country, they can actually make more money for doing the same job. But if you are Elon Musk, if you're me, if you're perhaps you, and you are someone who wants to start a business, here's my perspective. No doubt it's a good idea to take advice from multi-billionaires, and I've got a lot of respect for what Elon has done. I also look at someone like an Alex Hormozi, who I find myself often agreeing with when I watch his channel, which is, I'm a security-minded person. I like opportunities that have a high probability. And so for me and my personality, and I think a lot of people who get into business, their personalities are, I would rather have an 80% chance of a 5x return on my money than a 10% chance of a 500x return on my money. Guys like Elon Musk have become very successful by playing the ladder, right? They basically go out and, what was the chance that PayPal is going to work? You hear about him, but how many people do you not hear about, right? You hear about Tesla, you hear about other companies. How many people do you not hear about? Just the graveyard of companies that just never made it, never got more funding. For someone like myself, who has, started with no family money, started with no loans, never got a small business loan, never raised capital from investors, owned pretty much 100% of my companies, or had a business partner who put in the same that I did. Someone who is basically always cash flow positive. Pretty much every business I've ever run, we get to cash flow positive. We're not losing money every month. We're not on a burn rate. If you're that, I happen to think it's a better way to run a business for the average person, because to me, like, getting to 50 million in this day and age isn't really that difficult if you really apply yourself. Business itself, strategy is rather straightforward. You find a product people want and you find a way to sell it at a high margin, and you just scale it all the way up. And so if you can do that, you can get to, $30 million, they call ultra high net worth individual. If you have $30 million, you're one of fewer than 1 million people in the world that has that. All right, so you get to 50, you can get to 100. And if you build a company that can be sold, I think those numbers are very much attainable. How do you get to $100 billion? Well, that's the kind of person that I think perhaps wants to live in the United States because they want access to the market. By the way, you can start a business overseas. You can sell to, we work with Americans, by the way. Doesn't impact how our company is run. We sell to Americans. But okay, if you're manufacturing cars and you want to sell those in the United States, that's not going to be as much of a conversation of how do I pay zero taxes, how do I manufacture my cars in the United States or in Mexico and get them into the United States, whatever. But how many people are running a car business, right? How many people are doing the things that Elon Musk is doing? And if I'm giving advice to someone who's starting a business, I would say don't swing for the fences and PayPal. Just try and hit some singles, right? Get a business that cash flows. If you live overseas and you dramatically reduce your taxes or eliminate your taxes, you can save a lot of that money, especially if you live in a place that's lower cost of living, right? So you can live in, whether it's a more affordable European place, or you can live in Dubai, you can live in Southeast Asia. You can bank a lot of the money that you're making. That gives you more money for future opportunities. It gives you a cushion against, when everyone else is going into recession, you're sitting pretty with plenty of cash in the bank. Your business competitors are having to cut staff, cut marketing. You've saved up cash, so you're good, you're ready to go. That approach of just being conservative and building a conservative business that cash flows, keep more of the cash, just keep scaling it, keep growing it up organically, is a lot better than I need to go and raise money. I need to be in Silicon Valley. I need to be in the United States so I can go and ask people for money. You don't need money to start a business. And we've had numerous clients who make 1, 2, 5, I think recently $14 million a year. They started with nothing. They started with their intuition. They started with their effort. They just did it. Right? You don't need to be hanging around in Austin. I get there's a networking effect. And we saw during the pandemic, you can do networking anywhere. There's people all over the world who are smart. There's an increasing number of Americans. They're moving to Mexico. They're moving to Portugal. They're moving all over the place. You can do networking, but you don't need to be knocking people's doors. And you certainly don't need to be raising money, I think, in the average business. And so if you're not one of those smaller numbers of businesses that are needing to be in that U.S. ecosystem, why would you be in the United States? Unless you just really want to live there and you don't mind paying the taxes, I think there's so many better deals somewhere else because you're basically playing on cheat mode. If you have a business that just spits out cash every month and you just grow it by putting the cash back in, putting the effort back in, that's going to be where 90%, probably a lot more than 90% of entrepreneurs are successful, is running that kind of business. And then again, the steroids to cheat mode is when you go offshore and rather than keeping 55 cents on the dollar and then paying 30 cents of it in living expenses, you keep 95 cents on the dollar and you pay 15 cents in living expenses. And now you're ready for anything. I was talking to a good friend of mine recently in Lisbon, and we were talking about what I've said for years, unsexy businesses. He is now, after all of his business ventures, including some pretty sexy businesses, getting into you see Kobe Sanchez, for example, my old friend, buying laundromats, for example. Buying, he said, a lumber yard, right? Buying things where it's just okay, a lumber yard, if you're in Europe and they want to cut down on building, maybe you could get squeezed there. But you're not going to get squeezed the same way I have friends who worked for tech companies. We didn't get the round of funding. The company's now out of existence. We're all out of jobs. The founder's going into his next thing. I'm looking for that 80, 90% chance of just having a cash flowing business that just builds over time and playing the long game rather than trying to build up the next PayPal. I'm not saying Elon Musk. I think he really believes in what he's doing. I'm not saying how do I just make PayPal and get out of there? How do I make Tesla and make a bunch of money? But for me, most people, could you be a billionaire? Yeah, sure. I don't want to have limiting thinking. Could you be a billionaire? Of course you could. And by the way, you could be a billionaire using the former strategy of just scaling up, right? You have people, they call Grant Cardone a billionaire. I think that I've seen, listen, I won't comment on what his net worth is, but the guy runs a business that churns off a ton of cash every year, from what I understand. And so that's not a business where he had to go and raise money from Silicon Valley. He just scaled it up and just kept putting the money back in. Imagine if he were outside of the United States and had even more money to put back into the company to scale it up, right? And so if you acknowledge that you probably aren't going to be a billionaire, and you're just listen, I want to get to 100 million, and it's a little bit of a lifestyle conversation, but I'm taking the more certain path because I'd rather have a pretty certain path to X million than a very, very uncertain path to billions. And then I'm that guy that especially I'm getting a little bit older, almost 38 years old. Like, do I want to be like, I've started 5 companies and they've all failed and I basically have nothing, but the next one's going to work. Like, that's cool when you're like 25, 30, but at a certain point you're like, yeah, it's just nice to have some money. And so if you're following that approach that I talk about, this more security-minded, more certain approach, I don't really see why you need a high-cost ecosystem like the United States that's built around all the things like raising money, that has high taxes, that, sure, you've got a market. You can sell in today's competitive world, in today's connected world, into countries like the United States without being there. You can dramatically keep more of your money through lower taxes. I just don't really see the point of being in an expensive country to do that.